Last time, when the fake nerds talked about the Scott Pilgrim book series by Bryan Lee O'Malley, Scott was hit with the infinite sadness when his ex that broke his heart, as in completely ripped it out of his chest, stomped on it with her 6-inch stiletto shoes, and kicked it all over stage, gave her a call, and invited her to her show. But before he could get it together, he has to take on Todd and Roxy. So will Scott survive, or will he succumb to the infinite sadness? Find out in the Fake Nerd Book Club of Scott Pilgrim, Volumes 3 and 4. Scott Pilgrim and the Infinite Sadness, and Scott Pilgrim Gets It Together. I'm Ben Magnet, and I'm here with my friend Sparkz and Ryan Eliopoulos, and we're here to talk about some Scott Pilgrim. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Back again. Once again, as is true of all the Scott Pilgrim books, it's all written and drawn by Bryan Lee O'Malley, art, coloring by Nathan Fairbairn for the color editions,
Which I also read.
Let's just broad strokes again. How you guys feel about volumes 3 and 4? Wryan, I know you're the least familiar. Not that you never read this, but
Turns out I didn't read volume 4 because I was like, I don't remember any of this shit. Who's Lisa?
Wait.
I thought I did.
Does that mean that every time you played the game and Knives' dad has shown up, you've just been like, the hell's up with that guy?
I thought it was from the game. I thought it was a thing. Yeah, totally. I totally. It's funny how memory works. Reading books a long time ago. Because I'm like, I was reading volume 3 and I'm like, yeah, some of this I don't remember, but I get the broad strokes. And then volume 4, I'm like, I don't want any of those shit. Wow, look at all this history I'm learning. So it's basically a brand new book for me. Fantastic. I'm getting so much more that I wanted while still getting a great, fun comic series. The characters are still great. The art's still great. Getting just deeper into everything is just so enjoyable. And this book, like, not that I was surprised or anything, but it's like kind of like, man, this book has got a lot going on. And it's like I said last time, the emotional maturity that this book can have while also looking like a cartoon, comic book. It's really impressive. I really like volume 3, but I love volume 4. That's where we get into the heavy duty stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, volume 3 is really good because of the stuff with Envy and Todd and everything. But then volume 4 just takes a unexpected turn, and it's like, whoa. Because a lot of the time you think, okay, let's just see what there are. I feel like volume 4 is the real, I don't want to say the flashpoint, but it is a turning point in the Scott Pilgrim story, where it's it's not just, I mean, yes, you get the funny video game stuff, you get the stuff that's all hilarious, like Scott couldn't believe Ramona dated a girl for a while, and then it goes into really hardcore heavy themes, and it's just you wouldn't expect this from a book like that, where it's it still holds the funny comedy haha moments, but it can still talk about really difficult themes, but in a way that doesn't talk down to its audience.
Sure. Yeah. I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think volumes 3 and 4 are super good. I really enjoy them. 3, I think, builds in a lot of what we'll dig into with how much more complex there is in Envy than the surface level stuff you might expect. A lot of the flashback stuff is really great.
Yeah.
So we'll dive in on all that, and obviously 4 is doing a lot of Scott and Ramona focus.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. So we'll start off at volume 3 with being at the Clash at Demon Head, being at the concert. We get obviously a lot more focus on the drummer.
Yes, Cyborg Lady.
Who's part of this. Again, another sequence where a lot of what we get here about them being at the concert is very much like what we have seen in the film.
But obviously, but gratuitously expanded upon.
Yeah.
More than I remember. I don't remember it being a multi-day prolonged event that Todd and Scott go through, basically, instead of just being a fight. They have a fight at a supermarket. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I just mean the initial opening.
Oh yeah, the opening.
The night that they're there, they're sitting in the back room all together.
Oh, the glare.
You've got the drummer getting involved. She's the one who actually punches knives, and different triggers for Scott to jump up in attacking Todd.
Yeah. Who actually isn't really doing anything, which is funny.
Yeah, they're just kind of staring at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Todd. Todd's such a goober. What a huge douche. It's a lot of the character that you see in the movie, but a little bit more. He's even dickier here. Thinks he's just the hottest shit
to
ever.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We get the really well explored through this volume stuff about Todd and Envy having been best friends
Since they were 11?
since they were 11.
Yeah.
Since they were young.
And it's funny because like again, like just going like from the movie, like none of that stuff explored. And in here it's like, oh yeah, like we've known each other since we're 11 and like we've been together since we were 11. So like then you were cheating on me? Is that, and so Scott's like now confronting that with Todd too, and it's like, oh man, all these people have so much baggage. It's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone treats somebody bad who then treats somebody else bad. It's just a vicious cycle of people hurting people. And it's like, goodness gracious, guys, come on.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Jump in.
Oh no, I was gonna say with the whole stuff with Todd, the drummer, and the fact that Todd and Envy were together since they were 11, that just throws in a whole lot of wrinkles that if you've just seen the movie, you wouldn't even expect. Because when I first read this book, and I was like, oh yeah, of course, I know about Envy, I know about Todd, and then just seeing like the whole sequence of between Envy and Todd, and then Ramona and Todd, and it's like, wait, like when Envy, jumping ahead a little bit, when Envy's talking about how it's like Todd loves me, he punched a hole in the moon for me, and Ramona's like, yo, he did that for me too, and then it breaks Natalie, and then when she turns around and she sees Todd come out with the drummer's panties on his head, it's just,
good Lord.
It's well, once again, I don't want to call it that was Envy's Joker moment where she snaps.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a world-shattering event for her.
It's eye-opening.
Where it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And even then, where it's like, well, if you've been with Todd since you were 11, then what about all the time that you were with Scott? And it's like you see Scott get vulnerable in these flashbacks, and also, I love the flashbacks in this book. I love how, for a good section, it goes a 2-page spread of what's happening in the present, and then a 2-page spread of the past, and it like jumps back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then when stuff gets more and more relevant, like when you first meet her, she's like this anime nerd, introvert wearing a hoodie, like I'm just cold, just like on a computer, leave me alone. And then you see her gradual rise to becoming what she eventually will be of Clash of Demon Head. And it's like, it hurts to watch that. It hurts to see that. Because, when in the beginning, it's like, you had so much promise and you were so cool. And yeah, like you said, Ryan, every character in this book has so much baggage. And I think the only one that maybe not, or the two characters who don't have a whole lot of baggage are Knives and young Neil.
Yeah.
That's because they're the babies of the group.
So, I do want to talk, let's talk through the flashback stuff, a lot of the Natalie and Scott stuff.
It's so good.
It is really good when Natalie and Scott are first getting to know each other. You have Julie there, once again calling Scott on his shit. This is early Julie and Steven together, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And Julie's a little more relaxed. Again, she's really only shitty to Scott. Because again, as we discussed in the movie discussion, which we've put up by now, so you should go check that out. Julie's the only person who will call Scott on his shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true in the books. And Julie here is the one who's saying he's a total lady killer wannabe jerky jerk. And this is where we get it's referenced in the film very well too. It's the time you after Psych in the ladies' room with Monique, that was a misunderstanding. That time with Sandra in the ladies' room at Burwash, not what it looked like.
Yeah.
And Scott has an excuse for everything. And this is a post Kim Pine Scott, so we know how he is about the way that he's negligent about these details and plays off this idea that that's who he is.
Yeah. These two volumes really highlight just how detached Scott is from like his emotions.
Oh yeah.
Like hardcore more than the first two. Cause like it's when him and Ramona are getting closer together, you know, like the stuff with their band is progressing. And he just seems to like not care, but like not intentionally. He's just like aloof. He's just constantly aloof. And it's like, dude, just pay attention to your life. pay attention to the people around you.
I
and
don't
it's like
think,
it's so crazy.
I don't think any volume goes harder up to this point than 4 on like Scott just blatantly not remembering details.
Oh yeah, there's so much
and like
of that.
sometimes they're important ones and sometimes they're nonsensical ones.
How many
but, like,
times will he forget that Jason Kim has a car? How many times? And he's met him 4 times.
Who's Jason Kim? He's the guy with the car. Hey, I know a guy with a car.
Yeah.
Like Scott. He just doesn't. He's not engaged.
Yeah,
That's the whole thing. Is he's totally dissociated himself out of his own life to the point where he's like just not connected to it. What I really like, and I don't want to get into this too much or jump ahead too much, but that I'm looking forward to is that when you're reading the flashbacks with Natalie and Scott, it sure feels like things escalate very quickly on Natalie's end. Like she just seems to start just like pushing Scott away and pushing Scott away and pushing Scott away. And what I love is we're going to get to later and we're going to see Envy's flashbacks.
That's cool.
And we're going to see the gaps that this is very much Scott's perspective.
So it's not
of how Natalie,
not one-sided.
You're not necessarily going to see the other side of moments.
Yeah.
But you're going to see more of the in-betweens of these flashbacks.
Of how she did have this happen.
Where Scott has removed things he did.
Of course.
And only sees it as himself being a victim of Natalie being terrible, and that's all you see in these flashbacks, which is well articulated. Makes you really hate Natalie. Thinks she's like really shitty, and she's like, oh, Scott is like kind of a shitty person, but he's a shitty person because of Natalie. That's Scott's own internal narrative, even to an extent where he excuses some of his behavior because he's like, well, Envy was really shitty to me. And this is where that comes from. It's very selective. In his own remembering of these flashbacks, what triggers him.
And that is how memory works. Like you remember your side of the situation, and you don't always put other people's perspectives into that. A page that you were looking a couple pages ago from when he first tells her that he loves her, and he's like, was that a bad idea? Just don't worry about it. Forget I said anything. And she just gives him a look. I'm like, oh man,
she's just looking away from
this.
Him.
Is not gonna work.
She does it. The second he said that, and she doesn't even acknowledge it or anything, it's like, doomed. Just like Gerg just popped up and starts singing the Doom song because when you tell someone, because like the second you tell someone that you love them and you don't hear anything back, and they're just like silent, it's like, oh no, that's not good. You got it. That's like that dude on TikTok with the giant red flag just waving it around.
I think that. I like that it's on a double page spread where you get the night a nighttime thing that's like that, where it's the one where she says, start calling me Envy. And then the one where, he says he loves her.
Bless you.
Excuse me. The one where he says he loves her and she doesn't respond, which really ties into the idea. Like she stopped liking being called Natalie, and then she stopped liking me. And they really frame it like, Call Me Envy is like this super villain moment in Scott's life for him, which isn't true.
And you can tell like Scott really does like her. Like he actually does like really care for her. And like, hey, it's our 8th-month anniversary. And she's like, you remember those kind of things? That's so silly. And he's like, am I the girl in this relationship? And she's like, you totally are. And I'm like, this is not a healthy relationship.
There is an amount of Scott was shitty before Envy. And I know this because of later book stuff and things like that. But there is also an amount of, you see like, even though this is Scott being selective and memory stuff, these are the things Scott is focused on. And so these are the things that Scott has internalized about himself. And Carrie's like, I need to avoid these things. So like remembering something important, like an anniversary, keeping track of those things. Oh, that makes me the bitch. I better not do that anymore. So it's just how Scott shaves away at these things to completely emotionally disconnect. One of my favorite things about Volume 3 is the bonding of Wallace Wells and Ramona Flowers over their mutual hatred of Envy Adams. The way they love to hate her so much.
This line cracks me up. Ramona, I love you forever. And I have dipping sauce, and I'll forever be your dipping sauce bitch. I'm like, what a weird thing to say to someone. I love that.
Is it Wallace who tells us like, let's be friends based on mutual hate?
Yeah.
It's just like, just that line. It's like, you know what? I have met people, especially at my job, where we both don't like a certain person, and then we just become friends because we don't like said certain person. It's like, and it is pretty much as like we are friends because of our mutual dislike / hatred of a certain supervisor or a certain person. It's just hilarious.
It's fun to do. I won't say it's healthy, but it is fun to do. We get a lot of Ramona's flashes around her head. They're peaking up increasingly across these 2 volumes. Whenever she's getting like really annoyed, really ticked off with Scott, her flashing is going on, which seems to be just like a cue signal. I know what it is, but what I'm going to say is it's a cue signal for Ramona kind of like debating leaving Scott.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, is Scott really where I want to be, and that kind of thing. And Scott picks up on it too.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Wallace and Ramona stuff, when we get later in volume 3, she's in the full-on fight with Envy, and Envy's got the whole bit where she's like, "Are you gonna hide behind Wallace all night?" And she's like, "I'm not hiding behind him." He's like, "Oh, excuse me, was I in the way?"
Yeah.
and then he's like, "Oh, never mind, I gotta go pee." And she's like, "No, wait, I'm enjoying our friendship. We're bonding."
They're really great. I'm glad
they're a good pair.
Yeah, I hope there's more of them being friends in the future.
Yeah. I find this line just really selectively strong. I'm sure I'll start liking you again in the morning.
Yes.
Because while Scott is being Scott, in this particular instance, it's just kind of Scott's baggage around Envy coming out in full.
Yeah.
And Ramona's weighing a lot of that on him. But I won't say like Scott has necessarily been shitty this night, and Ramona's just kind of like fucking done with him.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really sad.
To just continue how bad Natalie is at this current moment, she doesn't remember who Neil is when she definitely knew him.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, that was Neil? Oh, haha, oops. I guess he's dating the wrong girl." Right as you know, Knives got punched her highlights out. Ramona's like, "I think we should get out of here." And Scott's, "Give me a second. My life is flashing before my eyes." There's a lot of Scott. I took a lot of pictures of. There's so many moments where Scott is, he's like in panic mode. He's just always like, "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to feel." And I'm like, Scott, you're always like this. I feel like
he trips up and locks up a lot under Envy's presence.
Yeah.
And that's really pronounced. Also with the flashback stuff, we get flashbacks of Wallace.
Yeah.
And how Scott and Wallace came to know each other.
College.
Which is great. And that Scott's parents love Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like you only get like between the lines stuff on this, but it does feel like Wallace seemed to have been in a spot where he needed support and a family.
Yep.
And Scott's family did that. So Wallace is kind of in turn returning the favor on Scott.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
For what his family and Scott to an extent did for him.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't like Scott.
Yeah.
But there very much is a pattern of him being like, "Can I crash at your place?" This kind of stuff. The family feeding him, taking care of him, loving him. That Wallace is now returning.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really cute and gets built up very well. Let's talk about the supermarket.
Honest Ed's.
Yeah, Honest Ed's supermarket. Just hilarious. This existential horror of Honest Ed's sales and everything going on inside. An interesting concept for where they would fight. And one of my favorite panels is both the reference to the Evil Dead cabin that's at the top, with the talking clocks to Scott, and then at the bottom of that page is like Todd going fading fast. "I always thought I would, Father. I tried my hardest to please you, Father."
All the repressed traumas coming out in this 99-cent store. It's great.
Yeah.
This in particular makes me think of, I hear Matt Berry's voice.
Oh, sure.
Because of IT crap.
Yeah.
Father.
Yeah.
I really love Todd falling apart inside of this place, constructing a rifle from household items to attack Scott.
He MacGyver's
and then just like falling apart as he has flashback memories, which is where we get our first actual full talking moment with Gideon.
Yeah.
Gideon shows up in one of Todd's flashbacks about using his vegan powers on Scott. We also in there find out about him sleeping with the drummer as well.
The cyborg.
And Todd goes nuts.
He's nuts. But also, there's a rule in the second phase of the fight when they're in Honest Ed's, like, Todd, you can't use your superpowers because like Scott wouldn't have a chance. And there's a great line. It's kind of sad. So Todd's handicap is he can't use his powers, and then Wallace is like, "So what's Scott's handicap?" Envy says, "Scott's handicap is that he isn't a survivor." And I'm like, damn.
Yeah, that's
And
brutal.
Vols calls her an unbelievable bitch. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're so cool. But Scott makes it. He puts together like a power suit, wearing like gloves and glasses and stuff, and he makes it out of there luckily because Scott Todd cheated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that whole thing of the fight in Honest Eds was just like, it's obvious. The whole book it's weird, but it's a fun weird, especially like where you flash back and to see what Todd is going through, which I feel like this is one of the first times where we really look inside the mind of an evil X of what has happened to them.
Yeah.
Whereas going back to say Matthew Patel and Lucas Lee, they're just kind of one note in a sense where they're just like, yeah, we like Ramona talks about how they dated or what they did when they were dating, and they're there for the fight and they go away. Whereas Todd and eventually Roxy going into volume 4, they're around for a lot longer. It's not just like a sliver at the very end of the book or anything.
Yeah.
And they're expanded upon. Like, so looking into Todd's life, we're seeing like his dad being a very disappointed in him about like, or being like that kind of a-hole dad where it's like, oh, you can never be a vegan. It's like thinking it's like, oh, you want to go to vegan academy? You're not going to survive there. It's like, wow, what a unbelievable prick. And then seeing the clip of him over the drummer essentially seducing him is like, dude, she's never going to know. And it's just like, oh, so he's also a super shitty person. Like, this is the first time where Evil X has more depth than they're just like, I did Ramona for this is why we did it. I'm part of the Evil X's. I want to try and win her back. Oh no, we fight and I lose. Wow.
Yeah. His Todd's father did a number on him, sending him to Vegan Academy. Not thinking he's good enough. Yeah. And then also having people like supporting that, not like him being bad, like you just said with the drummer, like, hey, let's do something bad. Who's gonna find out? Who cares? I'm like, you don't have to. You could just say no.
Yeah, and even later on the episode, I almost called it the episode, or I did call it the episode, later on the book or the volume, when it's just the band members of Clash of Demon Head, they're at this bistro, Natalie goes to the restroom, and the drummer, I think her name is Amanda or something. I could be wrong. And Cyborg Lady, they're talking.
Yeah, she's a cyborg.
Yeah, Cyborg Lady is talking, and she's like, she has no idea what gelato is, huh? She's like, doesn't gelato have milk and eggs? And Todd's just saying blatantly, he's like, yeah, I'm breaking vegan rules, but I'm a rock. He's definitely that I'm a rock star dick mentality where no one can touch me, no one can hurt me. I can do whatever I want. I'm rich and I'm
don't
famous.
apply
Blah,
to me.
blah. Exactly, rules don't apply. And then he instantly starts making out with the drummer. And it's like, yeah, she doesn't know. It's like, oh yeah, even though I have these vegan powers, but I'm also not vegan. Where it expands a lot about, because in the movie it's a very fun little thing where he's like, gelato's not vegan, and it's like, eggs, bitch.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, in the movie it's really funny because it's a quick few notes and then that's it. Because once again, the movie squishes in all the fights, whereas this one you expand of how Todd knowingly knows he's been breaking vegan law and vegan rules, and he just doesn't give a shit because like he said, he's like, I'm a rock star. I'm not afraid to hit a girl. I'm not afraid to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah,
and like he's blatantly kissing the cyborg lady just like out in the open too. Like when this envy leaves, and I'm like, you have no regard for anybody, bud. Like you're like one of the worst ones here. Because like she could just walk in at any moment.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how you don't know she have panties on your head. Like, come on, bro.
Come on, bro.
Is it because of all the gel in your hair? Who knows?
What are you doing?
Who knows,
man? Yeah. I was just trying to find her name.
Yeah. It's like something Lynn.
I think they literally mention it once.
They mention it once, yeah.
Yeah. They mentioned it the one time and then never. But once again, I also.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say one of the things I do enjoy about the book, because after rereading this and of course watching the movies, so in hindsight, it's like, man, it's like one of those things I was talking about when we were talking about the movies. Like now that I know the books and the correspondence, it's like it would have been really funny, or it would have added a little bit more to Todd's character had they explored his being a total dick and also him cheating with the drummer, because the drummer is just there in the background of the movie.
Yeah.
And once again, the books, you have more time to expand, you have more time to work on it. It's different. I 100% understand. They can't squish everything into that movie. But once again, I really like how the Evil X's are starting to get more of a character, and they're not just one-offs.
Yeah.
To Lucas Lee's credit, Lucas Lee is the first that like gives us that hint of Ramona being a cheater too, and that kind of stuff coming up, and being here in the story of the way she was with Todd, and like what that meant. They do one of my favorite things, which is for the first time, Ramona finally goes, "Let's just blow this off."
Yeah, I love that.
And he's like, "What?" And it's like, "Yeah, let's just not go. We don't have to do this. Like, let's just not go." And they do, which still results in Ramona being pent up and angry about Envy. So she talks about Todd.
I love that. Yeah, like Scott's like when she says let's bail. Scott's, are you sure it'll be okay, dude? Come on, we're shirking duties randomly made up by people who hate us. Like, let's just leave. And I'm like, that's a great point. You don't have to do this. That's really good.
Yeah.
I love all the flashback stuff with Natalie and the band and Kid Chameleon. All that stuff is so great. And like I'm now really excited to know that there is more like context for the Scott side of it. Because like I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, man, Natalie really turned for what feels like no reason. And I'm like, after you said that, I'm like, of course, because we only have one side of the story kind of thing. And I'm like, she's wearing like $900 boots and all this stuff, and I'm just like, oh man.
That's why you have that moment. You have the moment in the rain where Envy's like, do you want to just talk?
Like,
do you want to talk like people?
Do you want to talk like normal people? And then Scott says, Natalie, have we ever talked like normal people? And I'm like, oh, ouchies. Ouchies.
But that's again also comes from Scott's perspective, which is like very much her. They're giving you the insight of like, Envy's more than what you're being told Envy is. From this perspective. Like, you are being hit with, she's this heinous bitch. This is the narrative Wallace has. Wallace has this from watching Scott do it and go through it. But again, very deeply on Scott's side when that was happening. Yeah. And like, I'm sure he didn't like her. Like, he just doesn't like her. And that's fine. But that's informing it. It's feeding to Ramona. But like, there are a lot of other people who are fine with Natalie.
Yeah.
And that's notable too, that is there. And like, yes, she's a bitch. Don't get me wrong. Like, she's a bitch, but we have to call into question how much of her being a bitch now is a reaction to Scott.
That's true.
And we'll learn more at some point. But I do really like how they give you just like, this is from her perspective. And like it's not to say these moments aren't true again.
Yeah.
These moments happened. These moments happen exactly as you're seeing them. You're just only seeing these moments, not the other moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got the "Are you cheating on me?" moment.
Yeah. Some guy Jacob called like, yeah, he calls me sometimes. I'm like, well, why? Who is he? Are you cheating? Yeah.
It's really there's a sadness. There's a great sadness,
an infinite sadness.
In the way that Scott is encountering these moments with Natalie, the way she's treating him. Like it's easy to feel bad for what Natalie's putting Scott through because it's shitty. The way she treats him is shitty. I want to highlight, it's just one of my favorite little bits, and I'm right here at it, which is when Kim's saying, "Can you believe that I might actually have a date?" And Steven and Scott have to look at each other for a moment and be like, "You're a hell of a catch, Kim. You're a damn fine woman, Kim. Damn fine." I'm trying to rally.
And it turns out she actually doesn't have a date.
No, she doesn't have a date.
She's just making a costume.
Yeah.
For the band gig. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that bit.
The two moon punch is a great bit.
Yeah. You get Ramona really wanting to know more about Kim. She likes Kim, thinks Kim's cool, wants to know their history.
Yeah.
Scott ain't got shit, and when he gets frustrated about it, he lays it out the way he does in that movie, which is true.
How he beat up a 96 guy.
About it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just yelling about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really that is such a great scene because it shows again how Scott will just not remember anything.
Right.
And just like Kim is an important person in his life, and like he's kind of like skirting like the things that he did, but also like what brought them closer together. And he's just like, yeah, she was just like a girl in my class, and like I don't know, she followed me around. She was in a band. She was in my band. You know, she played drums, I think. And I'm just like, oh, Scott, come on, dude. Like,
and we did our movie discussion already, but this is a good moment to still highlight like a lot of bits and jokes that you see in this volume and the fourth volume are worked into that movie, but maybe in different ways.
Yeah, lots of lines for
ways
different
that adapt them better for the format of the film. Which I think is pretty good. I gotta highlight the when she does the flashback about Todd hitting the moon for her, and he's like, "You're my hot little bitch, baby. I'm gonna prove my love to you." And it's like, oh god,
that
Todd.
line. I also took a picture of that line. That line was so gross.
So gross.
Just like Todd being like the supreme bad boy and just like demeaning Ramona in that way, and then punching a hole in the moon to quote unquote prove his love to her, and then going to flashback with Natalie where he's a little bit different. I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no word bubbles with him and Natalie when they were kids. It's just Natalie's monologue about talking about how, like, yeah, we were kids, and then he got shipped off to Vegan Academy. Then he came back for a little bit. Then he got shipped off again, and now he's back with me. And it's just one of these like, what is up with this dude?
Mm-hmm.
They definitely talk in the flashbacks, but it's not like it's not like a whole lot. But they do talk.
Yeah. You're talking for the Natalie and Todd bit.
Yeah.
They do talk. Crash and the boys show up again, but they've like mastered time and space and music, so they don't even need instruments anymore. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
I love that.
It's so silly. We're gonna help you, Scott. Don't worry. It's pretty.
Yeah,
good.
they become friends. It's like, how did that happen? Okay.
Yeah. There are certain like I didn't take a picture. Can you find? I just showed it to you. It's like the white stark background image.
Yeah.
When something really dramatic happens in this volume, and it's happened before, but like not to this extent. The art shifts, and it's like it's one of those. We talked about it in the last 2 volumes where like it'll be like a completely like blank page to show how dramatic the emotions are.
Yeah.
Like when this page
is the bit where she finds out that he punched the hole for Ramona.
Yeah, and like it's like her entire world is shattered, and like the art changes, the color changes, like it like you really feel it. And I'm like, man, like Bryan Lee O'Malley is so good at like making you focus on like this is a important dramatic moment for somebody.
Which is O'Malley capturing an aesthetic from manga and anime.
Yeah,
with the way that he stylizes the paneling. Which I think is really good, but like he's interpreting it his own way here.
Ramona and Envy fight, which is a great fight. It looks so good in color too, man. Gosh,
the inspiration for the Roxy Ramona fight.
Yeah,
with the hammer. It's a great fight. I really love her getting completely fed up, and again Wallace supporting her. Break her horsey old face. Excuse me. Like she's so angry at Wallace suggesting that. Wallace just throwing her off all the time. She's easily distracted, Ramona. She's only got a little brain.
Knives shows up in this fight too to help her out, to help Ramona out.
Yeah. That's a great bit when Knives gets into the fight and whoop kicks over at Envy, knocks the hammer away.
I love that multiple times she tries to insult Envy and she tries to insult Clash of Demon Hand. She's like, their music sucks, and she's like, no, it doesn't. I hate your music. No, I love your music. She can't help it because like
music's not that good. Yes, it is.
I love that. Knives continues to be such a great character, and like seeing her like weeble and wobble and like, oh, are you gonna get over Scott? No, I still love him. I'm like, oh,
such a 17-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
I only want his happiness.
Yeah.
When she crashes into the wall, it's really important to acknowledge again, like as a difference, because it's easy for people to think about the movie. That Knives knows that he cheated on her at this point. Like these things are made with that knowledge.
Yeah.
These decisions. Oh, here's another one of those.
Yes, I love it.
As you said about Ramona, this is when Envy tells Ramona that she mentions Gideon in his place by name.
Oh yeah, you've been to New York? Yeah.
The Chaos Theater.
The Chaos Theater, which is Gideon's theater. And Ramona gets all locked up on that. Because we mentioned Knives, we got to highlight Scott being a good person for a moment.
Oh yeah. That's such a good moment.
And like trying, he doesn't 100% succeed, but he tries, which is where he sees Knives really sad, and he debates walking away.
Yeah,
as we've seen Scott walk away before, and Scott goes over and he talks to Knives, and he tries to be really supportive and everything, and Knives immediately takes that as, does this mean we can get back together? And he's like, whoa, no. But he just wants to make sure that Knives is okay.
This is like, I'm not going to say the first moment because my memory is bad with all these books. But like one of the first moments where Scott really tries to like be good and like do something and like not skirt away from responsibility or emotions. And he's like, I know I'm gonna sit down to this girl that I hurt and I'm gonna say, hey, I'm sorry that I hurt you. And
Yeah,
like, you deserve better than me and stuff.
This is a really important moment because you can argue that with Envy present, and this is not long after Envy did her whole "Do you want to talk like normal people" bit to Scott, and Scott's kind of taking a lot of this into consideration. That like, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Scott's considering that he can be Envy to Knives.
Yes,
and that he doesn't want to be that. Of all things, he doesn't want to be someone's
and
envy.
that he can recognize that is like such a little like like a +5 moment. Yeah,
it's a big step, and like he's acknowledging that like the way Envy treated Knives, who loved Envy so much as like a pop star, was so shitty.
Yeah,
and it makes him so angry that Knives got treated that way. And like it's a good human moment from Scott. And I think you're right. It's like the first good responsible thing Scott does. In the present timeline in the books.
But to the point of like him doing that for Knives as she's walking away, I still love you. Oh no.
It's not, but that's not Scott's fault. Like Scott.
No, I know.
Scott's trying to be supportive of Knives and like be a good person. And take some responsibility here. And he doesn't say like, no, we like, play it vague. He's like, no, we're not getting back together. That's not.
Yeah, he didn't like.
That's not the thing. He didn't like try to make it in between. Like, whoa, that's just a complicated question, right? But he said no. Knives is a 17-year-old girl and takes the smallest amount of positive affirmation from Scott to being there's still a chance, because that's how teenagers are. And so that's where she is. But I also think it's important that as she says that, like, there's still an amount of it's still big for Knives to do that and then attack Envy. And when Ramon asks why, say it's because I only want him to be happy. That's also a big thing because it's Knives saying like, even if it's with you, that's what I prefer. That's also massive. And an important character step for Knives. I love we do get like their outfits we find out that are in the end of the movie. They come from this show where they play.
The black outfits.
The sex bomb outfits. Which I think is great.
The man in black.
It's a good visual use that they had them there.
Envy's outfit costs like $50 million.
Yeah, it's
me up right.
Crash and the Boys. You said Crash and the Boys. They actually had a hostile takeover. It's the Boys and Crash.
The Boys, and Crash.
They've changed now.
They got like power gloves.
Never forget that you still have Joseph, Holly's gay roommate. In the
he's just whipping out silly bangers left and right.
I'm here for Todd Ingram. He's not even hot anymore after he like hits a woman, and then he's like, yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Good reuse of that joke. I did want to highlight one of the flashbacks in particular. It's a really important thing where Envy is the reason why Scott had to switch to bass. Scott was not playing bass before Envy made him.
That's true.
Which is also a really major thing. Because he was the drummer before. And he was forced to switch to bass. And that sucks. That's still something that's weighing on. Like Scott's still the bassist in their band, even after. So that's like a factor on Scott.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I thought was just that's an important thing, which I liked.
You mentioned
we hear a little bit of Stacey Pilgrim, not a ton in Volume 3.
No, not much.
Very very brief appearance of Stacey Pilgrim. Stacey Pilgrim's a Superman fan. Oh yeah, this is one of those ones, Ben. I wanted to ask you because like I've reread these books and like I still can't figure out if this is supposed to be relevant. There's the part where Michael Como shows Scott his ring. Hey, check out my ring, and it's like a skull inside that says Scott.
I don't know.
Right, and then we just move on.
Even when I got to that part, I'm just like, what was the point of that? I'm trying to like wrap my brain about it. I was like, what was the point of that whole thing? Was like it was just even I agree. I was like, that was weird. That didn't need to be there. I was for a split second, I was like, is this gonna like come back to haunt us later on down the line? And it was like, nope.
I tried to figure out if it's in connection to like when Scott needs his one-up or anything like that, but I cannot.
It could
for the life of me remember any of that.
It honestly could just be like a reference that's like an old reference that we don't know. Possibly.
Yeah. It's so weird because usually like so much of this I find either is a reference that is very clear and direct in the way it's presented,
Yeah.
or is important to the story. And I don't know what this one is.
Well, there's a reference that neither of us, neither on the movie or the well, we haven't gotten to it, but there's with the vegan police, they have a zoom ray. That's like from like an old 50s sci-fi movie, but like that's not something any of us would remember. So like there are more references that just like we might not catch. And I just don't think they would throw this out there for random. I
agree with you. It's more that this one gets a focus.
It does, yeah.
Like a 2-panel focus that I don't think we normally do when there's something more like this.
Yeah.
It usually feels like that will be story relevant, but I'm telling you, I don't know how it could be.
Maybe it pops up and we still remember. Yeah.
I just wanted to check on your thoughts. We're getting Natalie's been talking about Ramona a lot. And her history in New York, that's bothering Ramona.
Mm-hmm. That's why she wants
she wants to kick her ass. Mm-hmm. It's God, there's so many good panels of their fight together. It's extremely well done. The art is gorgeous.
Yeah, I love that page. That's a good page.
I love the way that it goes down, especially with Envy coming back around on Ramona and then Scott getting involved. God, Envy, like, can she be more evil than squishy, squish, 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 squish? What the hell, Envy?
Murder on the
line. So the bit from I think we referenced this in the movie discussion, but the bit with Roxy's leg that actually belongs to Envy
Natalie.
And Scott. He touches the back of her knee and she completely falls apart.
Flop.
Which Ramona doesn't want to know anything more about.
Todd's cheating. Hold on, go back to this page. Todd's cheating on you with your drummer, you stupid hoe.
Yeah.
Hoe is not a word you hear very often anymore.
No,
like that was a 2000s word for sure.
I really like the sweet in comparison to like Ramona's flashback narratives, the very childhood love that was taken away, sweetness of the artistry for Envy's flashbacks about Todd.
And I like in the
color
color
pink, all in
in the color edition, the Ramona flashback's blue and Envy's is red. And I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah,
looks nice.
And then we get into Envy and Todd fighting with each other. She uses the hammer against Todd.
They cut off the cyborg lady's arm. It's like, hey, do you want a new arm?
And Envy, you're my girl. Oh, Todd, let's both be girls.
They use it on Gideon, right?
Movie. Yeah,
that's on Gideon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I really like it. You also get his. This is where he hits a woman. And he says, "I'm not afraid to hit a girl.
I'm a rock star.
I'm a rock star." And I love the boys in Crash giving Scott the support in the base battle. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And it does come down to just the vegan police need to show up at just the right moment to put a stop to Todd, which they do.
I need a Deus Ex Machina, vegan police.
The de-veganizing Ray, I can dodge this, but he couldn't. It's like it's a whole cone going against him. Like, I can dodge this. No, he can't.
That area of effect's too big.
Yeah. No. The very silliness of the hair swooping down, being sad. I think that's really good.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is how Scott gets his 1-up. This is why I was like, it's supposed to be some connection between the ring and this. And I can't parse it, but I do think it's relevant that it's in the same scene.
Sure.
Scott sees it, this death ring, and also gets another life.
Mm-hmm.
This moment, again, also something that was different in the movie here. It's much more an accomplishment of beating Todd.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting interpretation of why this is the point he gets the 1-up.
Maybe because it's not just defeating Todd, but also Envy's involved. So it is a much bigger defeat than just an ex-boyfriend.
I'd be willing to go with an argument that because it's also the moment with knives.
Yeah.
There's an amount of responsibility he's taking for the right now that he's trying to take charge of. And that's the first step.
Yeah.
So and certainly going from this into volume 4, that follows up that Scott's trying to kind of get his life together. He's trying to get a lot. So the 1-up does thematically work here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite as stark as the I'm getting a life.
It's not as dramatic.
In the film. they get to play the show, which is also cool. This is just a nice thing.
I love those outfits.
And again, we get the hints that Gideon is there.
Yep.
And Scott sees him in the distance. And he's being asked about how they play, and he has nothing to say.
Oof.
Yeah. I really like the way that all comes together. Any other thoughts on some of that stuff there that we just went over? The whole kind of ending clash with Todd and Envy and all that. One other moment. Sorry, real quick, that I wanted to highlight this night. Steven is so nervous that he's throwing up in the bathroom.
Non-stop
throwing up like nobody's business. And Scott is the worst.
Yeah.
He just says, oh man, what, dude? You're actually puking? And he's like, yeah. Have you seen Julie? And he's like, what, Julie? No, I don't care. I can't believe you're puking. Can you find her? I think she's mad at me. Whatever. Have fun throwing up, dick. I'll catch you later on. And then when he walks out, he's just like, yeah, hey, cool. Yeah, I guess he's vomiting. Bye. Like,
zero disregard for
a highlight
friends.
of Scott being a shitty friend. So like, as we give him his flowers and praises for how he treats Knives, let's also remember that Scott's being pretty shitty to Steven still.
Yeah. I like how my catch is climbing the box. Gideon is like not a character yet, really, but like his presence is kind of like being more felt like as we get closer to his own book.
Yes.
And that's like because we know Ramona's past, but we don't know a lot about it, and we're also getting more info on her and how it's tied to Gideon. Is it volume 4 that we get the flash that we get where he's inside her mind?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll wait to talk about volume 4. But yeah, I like how the imposing history of Gideon is like slowly creeping into the story as well, because like clearly that's a big thing for Ramona.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
At the end, and Natalie leaves. And she says, "See you next time." And Scott is kind of disappointed there wasn't more closure to it.
Yeah.
Which Wallace and Ramona let him have, but they're moving on into summer.
Each time.
Before we move to volume 4, did you guys want to talk at all about the little bits at the end? There are 2 extra stories.
I mean, it's the fight where he fights a bunch of like poster ladies.
So obviously, that one is a trap. We now know.
Yeah.
Based on volume 4, set by Knives' father.
Yeah.
To attack Scott. And again, as I referenced when we did the discussion on the movie, but in case you didn't watch that, this is where you get Ramona fighting for Scott behind him to fight the girls because Scott's uncomfortable about it, which is recreated in the film quite well, I think, for the Roxy
fight.
A
Fantastic Four.
And just Wallace and Ramona both being exhausted by Scott because Scott can't pick a drink, and then they do all the cute stuff here. I'm sure Ben loves this with all the stats on the drinks, right, Ben?
Oh, of course.
Like a video game.
Yeah, I'm trying to... there it is. Yeah, and in nutrition facts, you get all your statistics, your +1 strength, -1 speed, all that stuff.
It's always cool. Yeah. Like, I love these collected editions, not just because they're in color, but like they give you so much bonus stuff, not just stories, but like tons of sketches and like, oh, here's an idea that I had, or deleted scenes. Like, it's a great little.
Or you get the stuff that's from the free comic, because like this story that we're talking about right now was from the free comic day issue that came out, and
which they make cute jokes about, like about things supposed to be free today and things like that.
Yeah.
And then a really small story about Kim's shitty roommates is here. The Wonderful World of Kim Pine. And I think this one's particularly notable. The style changes up.
Yeah.
It's still O'Malley. And these are O'Malley's colors.
It's more like chibi.
This is O'Malley coloring it specifically.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a little interesting window. This, of course, leads into volume 4, Kim moving out. All her roommates are trash.
Yeah.
That's very obvious.
Yeah, I really kind of like the style change with Kim's story, because I don't know what it is, but just seeing chibi versions of Kim and her roommates just going through the motions, it's always like, I know this is like, her roommates are horrible, but this is really cute, and I like this. I just thought it was like a nice little change of pace. Then also, of course, it does lead into volume 4, which is really nice. And I just, honestly, I kind of like it. I'm not saying that maybe I want a full volume or a full book in that style, but I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a nice.
It was a fun. You know what? It was a fun little palette cleanser before we got into O'Malley's regular art. Which one of the things I also want to talk about really quick is you can see, I like, as you're reading, if you put the art of volume 1 next to the art of, say, volume 3 and 4, you can tell O'Malley is a lot more comfortable drawing these characters in the style. Because when I was reading, something I didn't bring up when we were talking about volume 1 is how we know, like we see like the sketches behind you. It's like, yeah, that's definitely a Bryan Lee O'Malley style. But then when you look at the art in volume 1, it's like, the characters just feel a little off. And then the more you go into it, it's like, okay, they're more refined, they're more I guess you could say he's more comfortable. It's kind of like when you pick up a manga for like the first few pages or the first few volumes of a manga compared to the last few pages, the characters are more refined, their lines are sharper, and it's like, okay, they've really, you could see their style, the artist styles essentially evolve as the book goes on into the final product, which you're 100% comfortable with. And then you look at, because if we put the art between volume 6 and volume 1, well, it is the same artist. It's like, oh wow, I don't want to say he got better, but he definitely got more comfortable drawing these characters into a style that's more of his own.
That's a really good point, Ben. And that's honestly that's true for a lot of artists. Like if you jump on it, like, if you've never drawn Batman before, issue 1 compared to issue 20, like there is a jump. Not to say like the art's like, it's gotten incredibly better. Like you said, like they're more comfortable drawing these characters over and over again, so they can like do more free things. Like the action in volume 3 is considerably better than the action in volume 1, but it's not like volume 1's action is bad or anything. But, like that's a really good point.
And even with jumping into volume 4 for a hot second, even the emotions that O'Malley draws, the expressions are a lot more vivid. They're a lot more bright. They're not to say that the emotions in volume 1 are just like flat, they're stale or anything. They're not. It's just that he has a lot more. I feel like there's a lot more facial expressions. There's a lot more anime bits. Like once again, jumping ahead into volume 4, when he finally finds out that Ramona and Roxy dated, and his face goes, "You have a sexy face." Like his eyes are bulging. He looks like an anime. He looks like an anime / cartoon character with his mouth just like wide agape. Or when he gets the job, the smile and just like, "Yay, I did the thing." It's very like it's more expressive, and you can tell it's easily to see what emotion the character has. So
yeah. He can experiment more because he's used to drawing the normal stuff. So like, okay, I've mastered this part. Let's try to do something a little kookier, a little zanier, a little more out there. And then every volume subsequently gets better in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ben, because it really is just this comfortability with the world as a whole, and thus the characters really starts to come through volumes 3, 4, and going on and on. I think it just gets better. And that he feels the freedom to be more creative is very evident. So we'll close the book on volume 3, The Infinite Sadness, unless there's any last thoughts on that one.
Great read.
I wanted to, you guys were talking about it at length, and then I had a few things, but I'm just gonna echo what you guys were talking about. But when Scott talks to Knives, it was a very much oh hey, so look, we shit on Scott a lot in these books because he deserves it. He is a bad person, but him being a nice person and him essentially admitting fault is like, look, I know I hurt you. I shouldn't have done that, but it wasn't cool what Envy did, and essentially him trying to comfort her as a friend. I'm like, wow, there's like a step in maturity for Scott there. And then of course, like you said, Sparkz, any affirmation a 17-year-old gets, it's like Jim Carrey, like, so you're telling me there's a chance, and Scott being like, no, I'm shutting that down, but I just want you to know that you're better than her, and her being Envy, and that wasn't cool. And it's like, look, I got your back as a friend. And I'm like, oh, that's actually very mature and nice for Scott, because a lot of times with his exes, Kim being the exception here, he just runs away and doesn't want to talk about him anymore, or he completely forgets about him. I.e., like Kim, he's like, oh yeah, we dated, we did some stuff, and then the whole I had to fight all these dudes is like, I mean, yeah, you did have to fight a bunch of dudes, but I don't remember the purple guy.
Sure, like he's exaggerating it, but like there's
also you don't have to like yell and be a dick about it.
Right. Overall a good volume. Really like it. Think it expands the world and the characters very well, and leads us into volume 4 very well. Are you good, Ben?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's go to volume 4. Scott Pilgrim gets it together.
Let's go to the beach.
It's time for the beach episode.
Beach episode,
which is great. Bryan Lee O'Malley is a big fan of his anime and his manga, so of course you get your beach episode for a moment. Everything is just kind of nice for a little bit. in the world of Scott Pilgrim. Things are a little brighter. Things are a little more hopeful. That's certainly the way that Scott's looking at it. We get a lot of good stuff in this book. In broad strokes, like this is where
I know you appreciate this, Mr. Comic.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Of course I do.
Yeah. The big beautiful opening with the Sonic style emblem. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. This book in broad strokes, we finally get that development on Lisa that we've been talking about, alluding to in a lot of other pieces, talking about Scott Pilgrim. This is the Lisa book, effectively. For a little while, if you go to the back of the volume, you'll see that he debated Lisa being on the cover for this volume.
Yeah, there's a couple iterations.
And ultimately decided that wasn't quite right for the story. But Lisa is focal, very important to the story in this volume. And opens up a lot of things between Scott and Ramona. We also get the subplot about Knives' dad coming after Scott as well.
Yeah.
The silent killer.
Yeah. And of course, this is Roxy's book. So we'll get into all those things. Before we go through and like pull out specifics, you guys, any broad thoughts? This volume in particular?
I kind of gave it at the front, but like this is so far my favorite volume because like this is where like, again, not that the book hasn't had it, but this is where a lot of like the real history and like the maturity starts to seep in. Like, especially the stuff with Lisa is like super real. It feels like super real. And like, especially the stuff with like her coming back and the way Scott treats her and like the stuff with Ramona and like her ex and like, it starts to like, it's always been kind of like a fun comic book, like drama, but like, this is where it just turns into like a real drama at times.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like, this book is popping off in this
I agree with you. There's something of a tone shift.
Yeah.
Not a full one, but definitely like everything before now has felt like a kind of like video gamey and anime and like, you know, there's a lot of action and fun and humor and stuff. And like, obviously there's some serious stuff going on under the surface of a lot of these characters, but because most of them are bearing it or it's still a mystery to be revealed, all that kind of stuff, it's all staying very much, even as we dealt with Envy in the previous volume, very much kind of above table. People aren't getting into the nitty gritty of their deep emotions with each other. And in this volume, that's no longer the case. We have to get into real personal, real serious, emotional things. And that Lisa opens the door to that for both Scott and Ramona. That has to be on the table now.
And it definitely feels like Scott and Ramona are dating each other, but like, it doesn't feel like they're committed to each other yet.
Right.
Like they're kind of just like, this is a relationship we're both having and we're having fun, but we're not really like, what's the future for us really? And this is the volume where it's like, what are we doing? Like, are we going to be together? Is someone going to cheat and ruin everything? Like, this is when like, it really becomes, it feels like, you know, like an adult book almost, while still being the same book we've been reading.
Or at least their relationship goes from dating to we're in a relationship.
We're in a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. This is now
like, we're going to move in together.
Yeah. We'll start off with just like a banger Julie moment. Scott saying that he wants Lick's burger. At the beginning, and Julie being like, excuse me, whose birthday is it, you jerk? And he's like, damn it, what do you want to eat? Lick's burger. And Julie just like hates Scott so much, and I kind of love it, to be honest. Let's continue moving forward. We get a lot of allusions to like, why are we letting Knives drink?
Yeah, what's with the underage drinking?
It's like a great question.
Yeah, it's like
again is the person who calls it out, who's like, why are we okay with this?
It's even I'm just like, this is weird, but okay then.
There's a great line where they're singing like Steven is singing a song. It's this page. It's this page.
It's where Julie says the song is about me, people. He thinks I'm a total bitch and a half. And everyone else is like, oh my God, does she not know? And Kim's like, but it's such a good song, you're missing it. Sorry, not Kim, Knives. The narrator is sad and hurt, see, but the girl thinks it's all about her. Don't you get it? It's brilliant. And that's when Julie's like, yeah, okay, should she be drinking?
I love that moment because like one of my favorite memes of the last couple of years is "Does he know?" from the Batman, and I'm like right there, turn to that moment of "Does Julie know she's the bitch?"
Yeah,
and I think that's just really she's clueless.
There's a small but I think critical moment where like we do a lot of like Scott not being accurate about himself or how he portrays himself, and like I don't drink, and everyone's like, oh yeah, right, okay. But Ramona does this too. Again, talking about them as parallels. Ramona says, "No, ew, I'm a vegetarian." And he says, I saw you eat a chicken shawarma like 2 hours ago." Oh yeah, well, I'm not hungry. And what? Like, we don't focus on it, but like Ramona's also just playing like bullshit out there sometimes.
Yeah.
That's true.
100%.
Oh, this moment is
we gotta talk about the drunk making out of,
interesting
of Knives Chow and Kim Pine.
I've kissed the lips that kissed you, as she says that again. Like,
yeah.
That's like her favorite. That's like her quote.
Mm-hmm.
Drunk and making out, and unfortunately, the worst possible person to have seen them do it sees them do it, which is Scott Pilgrim.
Listen, alcohol makes them do crazy things, but like Kim, I can only imagine the state that Kim is in at this moment, where she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make out with this teenager."
So the only, the only total shitty thing about this, to me, is Scott just being a shitheel about it.
Yep.
Throughout the rest of the volume, he constantly just saying things to Knives like, "Oh, hey, do you want this poster of these two girls making out?"
Yeah.
And like Scott's just like the most. I've got a secret, and like
and he definitely blows it later on too. Like I don't remember who but he just like says it to somebody, and I'm like, Scott, dude, come on, what are you doing?
I don't know exactly how to feel about that certain scene. I mean, when I first read it, I was like, "Oh no," because it was definitely a different time period, and it's like that's a minor. That's well,
yeah, the underage drinking's not a good look.
I know later on in the book. I know later on in the book when like Julie calls out, I was like, "Why are we letting Knives drink beer again?" And Steven says, "It's hilarious." And then there's like a little author's note saying, like, Steven is lying. Underage drinking is not hilarious.
Yeah.
And we will never speak of this again.
But underage drinking does happen.
I mean, I drink.
I do think it's important to note that Kim is 1 or 2 years younger than Scott.
Is she?
So closer to Scott's 23.
Oh, okay.
So Kim is either 21 or 22.
Okay.
So the age gap's not as severe, but it's still there.
But what? But the to make out with Knives, who is Scott's ex as well.
Yeah.
Like just like. It's like I'm just like, and we never talk about it again either. So I'm just like,
we never talk about it again in this volume.
What? Oh, there. Okay, then there's my answer. That's all I needed to know.
That's what I'll say. Is we never talk about it again in this volume.
Because like on that page, there's like a beautiful like calligraphy of like, and we'll never speak of this again. And I'm like, that was just like a drunken hookup. You know, they were in their feelings, whatever. But like, we will get into it apparently. So
I think that's not O'Malley saying like that we'll never speak of this again in the comic, but more like representing the character's desire of like we're just gonna move on.
Yeah. Mistakes are made. Yeah.
We get
Scott gets a job.
Yeah, Scott gets a job.
He just do I have to like work?
Yeah.
Do I actually have to like do stuff? Like him like going to so many places,
and he just goes to get it, and everybody's just mad at him because he keeps getting whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And getting the job back.
Yeah, if
your life had a face, I would punch it in the balls.
Yeah. He goes to like the coffee place to see if he can get a job. He goes so many places, then he goes to it's a burger place.
God, that's one of my favorite. When he walks in and he's looking for Stacy and doesn't get Stacy, he gets Knives.
Right?
Yeah, Knives is working there. And then Scott, it does the thing where like Scott realizes for the first time that not all second cup exteriors lead to the same interior.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, well, I gotta go."
And he just like turns around
at Starbucks and like,
and he's always thought that it's just one
same one,
whatever location. Like it's a very video game.
It's like a portal.
Whatever outside shop I walk into, it's the same inside shop with
really
the same people working there. And then Scott goes, "Oh wait, that's not how this works."
Yeah. It's like a Pokemon when you walk into a Pokemon Center, you see the same Nurse Joy, but it's not the same Nurse Joy.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
Exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
No, there. Of course, we see like it was alluded to in Volume 3 where Scott was fighting the poster girls, and then in Volume 4 where Scott and Kim are talking, Knives' dad just slices a bus in half.
Oh my god!
And then Scott takes Kim and they go use a subspace portal to get out of the fight.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a very because I know I kind of sort of remember what happens in later volumes, but this is also a good catalyst to where Scott and Kim are finally figuring out their feelings and their and their complicated. Theirs is a very complicated relationship. Or complicated.
You get the hand grab.
Yeah,
panel.
it's not just like a quick hey I'm grabbing your arm and we're gonna go. It's very like O'Malley focuses on like the hand holding because it's like, okay, something's probably gonna be here.
Yeah,
or something's probably gonna bring up.
I think you're right in the sense that this is at volume 4, he's building the blocks that are going to lead to like Kim and Scott actually having a conversation with each other about their past.
Yeah.
And in volume 4, that feels very strong. I do think that the knives and Kim kissing thing, that's also part of it. These are all things that are pushing Kim more into Scott's mind onto the table of what he's thinking about. And it does feel very much like they're prepping Kim for, and like Lisa too, Lisa coming in and Lisa being so connected to Kim, Kim being so happy to see Lisa again, and that being like his oldest friend's connections. It's pushing Scott towards what we know is coming eventually is a conversation with Kim and a reconciliation over the way he treated Kim.
Yeah. And even like Scott, sorry, Ryan, but also a lot of the times, especially in this book, volume 3 and in volume 4, Ramona is talking about like, where's Kim? And Scott's like, why do you want to know so much about Kim? And she's like, I like Kim. I like him a whole lot. And then, of course, when Lisa gets into the picture and Ramona wants to know about Lisa, Scott doesn't provide a good answer. And that makes Ramona even more jealous. So it's definitely a very weird dynamic between it where Scott is like just, I don't want to say Scott is jealous of Kim because Ramona keeps talking about her. He's just very confused. He's like, but why though? And it's like, dude, you're an idiot.
Yeah, maybe she just she thinks Kim's a cool person, wants to be her friend. Like,
truly, like, I'm not saying this is in the text going forward. This is my interpretation of things, but I would argue that Scott has dissociated himself so much that like Kim, who's in the band, and Kim, who Scott dated, are not the same person to Scott. The same way that like the Second Cup interiors are not the same.
Yeah.
It's Scott does not recognize Kim I dated in Kim who's in the band.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem is that he doesn't see her like that. So he doesn't understand the interest because he's like, she's just Kim, the drummer, who doesn't like me very much.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, we also have a history, but it's not important. Like Scott's fully locked that part of it out of his brain.
Yeah. To continue on that point of Scott, when he's talking to Ramona at lunch, she's like, you don't know really anything about me, and he's like, yeah, you're like it's in a good way. It's like you're alluring. He's like, we've been dating for like 4 months, and the best you can come with is I'm mysterious.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you know me a little bit better by now? And he's like, I do. I totally know facts about you, and the number of evil exes you have. Like that's what he knows about her after 4 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
which is a huge problem.
Try.
Well, and again, you get the window into Scott's mind. Like he says, like, I can't know your age. How am I supposed to? Your age is unknown. Because he reads the descriptions we see in the book, which says age unknown. That's how he interprets it, and he never goes beyond that.
Yeah.
And so when he finally asks, she doesn't want to tell him.
Yeah.
It's very much.
I was worried that like, because again, I don't remember now knowing I didn't read volume 4. Like this could be completely different from the movie. So I'm like, I don't know if they're even gonna like be together or whatever. And I'm like, this feels like Scott's like slowly losing it a little bit. But he gets it.
He gets it together.
Yeah, but also this is where, because there have been snippets of Ramona being not the greatest person in the world. I mean, obviously volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, where she's straight up telling Scott, like, Scott, just ask how old I am. And Scott just takes his pause and finally goes, okay, well, how old are you? And she goes, I'm not telling. It's like, really? You gotta straight up say, it's like, just ask me a question. He asks the question and you pull the, I'm not going to tell you, because as like punishment for finally understanding, it's like, it's like, okay, Ramona, what the hell? I mean, not to completely spoil the end of the book, but he does find out. It's a really sweet and tender moment, but it's just one of those things where it's like, Ramona, you're also being part of the problem. I mean, Scott is the problem, but Ramona's not helping.
Yeah. there's a I'll just bring it up here. Like there's a little subplot about Joseph comes back again, the cool roommate.
Oh yeah.
And like he's gonna help them record their music.
Kim is moving in with Holly and Joseph.
Yeah.
So Steven's connecting with him and he's like, "Oh, you got all this equipment? Shit. Let's record an album."
Yeah. And like, well, you got a recording studio and it's just his bedroom with a computer.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's really good. And Joseph constantly says like, wow, you guys kind of suck. And then they slowly like over the book get better and better. And Scott at one point is listening to his own music. He's like, whoa, this rocks. Who is this? And I'm like, Scott, it's you. And that was really, really funny.
I zoned out there for a bit. Who is this? Like, it's us. This is Sex Bomb. What the hell?
Yeah. All the bits with that are really good. Particularly, I love when Joseph agrees to do it for Steven. He says, "Okay, I'll do it, but only because I find you attractive." And Steven's like, "I could live with that."
Yeah. As he's helping move boxes.
Yeah. For me, like a lot of those shots of like cutting into the room and Julie's on the bed and Scott and Ramona are on the bed and they're hanging out. Boy, does that take me back to
sure.
like high school of like kind of you don't really know what to do or where to go. And like we weren't necessarily recording music, but like we're sitting around in like full blown context. We're sitting in Jeremy's garage, which is his room. And like we're some of us are sitting on the couch, a couple on his bed, and he's at his computer, and sometimes he's playing his music, and we're all just like hanging in there, but we don't really know what to do with the day.
I absolutely had those moments.
Yeah. Just like go back to like he's captured that very well.
And I love like when Ramona and Kim are like on the bed and they fell asleep. Like anytime that there's dialogue, it turns into like pixelated words because like they're not really hearing it. I'm like, it's just a nice little touch that I appreciate.
Yeah, where they're totally tuning out.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. You get in this volume, we get a lot of the bars, the video game bars for things. This is where the P bar joke comes from. Mm-hmm. This is the thirst and cash.
I'm so thirsty.
Thirst is high, cash is nothing.
Yeah. He has a couch with a face on it in his pocket. I'm like,
yeah, the contents of Scott's pocket at the mall is all a cute bit. And again, another like, this is how Scott's shitty sometimes. Lisa shows up and says, "Oh, hey, we should go grab," like, we'll get into more Lisa stuff, but like the key thing right now is she shows up and she's like, "Oh, hey, let's go grab something." And he's like, "Oh man, that's great," because Lisa's going to buy him food.
Yeah.
This is Scott. And like when Scott's out with Ramona, who's buying the food? And this is constantly like having to look at this and be like, God, Scott, what are you doing? She makes a remark of like, oh, you know, this mall, it's a bunch of like slutty little teenagers. And then like Scott sees that she's wearing a dress and he associates that with her now. And I'm like, slutty. He looks down.
Yeah.
Bryan Lee O'Malley does a really good job of focusing on that.
I really like Lisa in this book, man. She's so charming. Maybe a little bit of an enabler, but like, you know, she's still really good.
A little bit, yeah. Just seeing Lisa come back and just like it's one of those moments where I mean I'm pretty sure we've all had moments before where we're out and about, we're doing our thing, and then all of a sudden someone calls out our name and we look up and it's this person we've known in high school or we haven't seen in years just because you know life took over and you know the universe has you converge at one spot. It's a really cool moment. But then of course Scott completely forgetting about Lisa. And then like this like Lisa Miller from high school, and he goes, "Oh yeah, of course I remember." And he's still kind of aloof about it. I'm just like, oh my god, if it's like even when Steven still like later in the book when Steven says, if your life had a face, I kick it in the balls. It's like, no, I'd help. I do the same thing.
Yeah. Scott does a thing that I've done, where it's like, hey Scott, remember me? He's like, oh hey guy. Hey man, I don't know your name. What's up, dude? I'm like, yeah, I've definitely done that. Sorry, guy.
There's a good comeback with Lisa on the how old is she thing with Ramona, because she asks Scott, which it had just come up, and she's like, yeah, I know it's a pretty tough question. And Scott is frustrated that he can't answer it.
Yeah.
To Lisa's credit in this story, you know, Lisa, we know, likes Scott.
Oh yeah.
And Scott didn't ever acknowledge it, didn't recognize it, and got together with Kim.
Yep.
Which ultimately it seems like Lisa just kind of learned to be okay with because she liked him.
Yeah.
And is all in all a pretty good person other than wanting to get Scott to cheat on Ramona.
Yeah.
Like, but outside of that, she seems like a pretty pretty nice person. So when she runs into Scott and Scott is giving her this attention, as she says later, she's like, yeah, it was laundry day and I was wearing this and I felt weird about it. But then you were so into it. I wanted to keep dressing like that for you.
Yeah.
Because she still likes Scott.
Yeah.
And she importantly is liking a Scott who was the Scott before he dated Kim. Right. Because when you meet a person like that, like you're not liking that person just inherently off who they are now. You don't know them.
Yeah, you're liking who they used to be.
Right. And so Lisa's doing all these things. I really like that scene later, like getting into it, because I love that scene. But the bit later where she's saying, and even now, like, he's like, oh man, I'm a lucky guy. You're wearing the nightgown and everything. And she's like, this is just something this is what I always wear to bed. And he's like, oh, really? And she's like, no, I threw it on before you came over. God damn it, Scott.
Yeah,
like that Lisa has to admit that like she's doing all these things to attract Scott.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to do, hard to admit those things.
Lisa starts hanging out with like the whole group again.
And Kim loves it.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Kim comes alive.
And somebody says like, oh yeah, she played like the skank in some TV show or something. She's like, yeah, it was just some crappy Canadian TV show nobody watched, and she's like being really modest. And Kim's
Scott's like in fear.
Yeah, and Kim's like, modesty. She's moving to the States. She's gonna be a star. Julie's like, whatever.
Yeah. And then of course,
I
like Ramona is just like all like instantly suspect of Lisa and everything.
She isn't. That's the thing. I don't think she
Not
is.
at the beginning.
Scott is afraid. Like the panel that it focuses on, like, is Scott freaking out about Ramona talking to her, but not necessarily that she's not getting the pings yet.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, she's not on alert about Lisa. It's because Scott's being weird about it.
Yeah.
That she gets on alert about Lisa. Because Scott keeps being like strange about talking about her, about Ramona knowing her, which is like super sus from Scott. He hadn't done anything other than like look at her skirt, and he's already acting like nothing. She's not even one of his exes.
Yeah.
No.
Like Scott's being super weird.
Yeah.
The fact that Scott is just so sorry, trying to get my thoughts straight here, because right now there's a whole bunch of things I want to talk about, and my brain is just like, oh, this, and this. So
yeah.
We've talked about before constantly. I even said it earlier in this own episode about how horrible of a person Scott Pilgrim is. Like, even though he is our quotes hero, and we follow him throughout the entire book, he sucks. He is not a good person, and the book is partially his journey of emotional maturity, of him realizing he sucks and all this other stuff. But yeah, Scott Pilgrim sucks. The fact that he is so weird. And he doesn't even remember one of his best friends. And even going back to volume 2, when Lisa just lets herself into the house and she's trying to be friends with Scott, and Scott doesn't want to. It's like, yeah, we talked for a hot second in front of the principal's office, but then I was just like, leave me alone. I'm playing my video games. It's like, dude, just like, how dare you like this? Like, at least get to know this person, or at least set some ground rules, or just something. And the fact that this, like, yeah, like you said, Sparkz, Lisa isn't one of Scott's exes. Lisa was always a friend to Scott. He was like always chill. Like the fact that he's freaking out, it's like, you shouldn't be. Nothing happened. She was one of your close friends. You should be like, yes, this is one of my greatest friends from high school, Lisa. And I will give Scott a little bit of credit in the beginning, like when he's talking with Lisa at the mall and he says he does have a girlfriend, so Lisa does know that Scott's in a relationship. It's not like he's trying to hide Ramona or anything, which I'll give him that.
Unlike he did with Knives.
Yeah.
Yeah, unlike he did with Knives.
Yeah.
It's still just, why are you freaking out? Because a lot of times when I don't know if you guys do this too, but when there are times when I'm reading books like Scott Pilgrim, stuff that like high school, like early 20s relationships BS that pops up, I try to think of a relation to stuff that happened in my own life. Like when my fiance and I first started dating, I introduced her to one of my oldest friends who happens to be a girl, and they get along swimmingly. It's like, if I were to introduce the person I'm dating to a person who's been a very major pillar of my life, it's like, I want them to know each other and know about each other. Cause it's like, I still want my old elementary school friend to be involved with the stuff that we're doing and also to hang out. But even she and I can go out to like, because we have like lunch, we have days where we just go to lunch, hang out, we talk, catch each other up on our lives. But at least my fiance knows about this. And of course, because she knows the person in question, she's totally chill about it.
It's definitely a thing that like, I think like in the year 2023, like we've kind of gotten over that stigma of like boys and girls can't be friends, that kind of bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
So like, yeah, like if you are someone of the opposite sex and you have like a best friend of the opposite sex and you get into a relationship, then sometimes that other person will become jealous for no really good reason.
Right.
And like, I'm not gonna say you guys been like, I've been there, like, I get it, but it's also, I was younger and like, I was in a mentality of like, oh, that's a dude, he wants you. And I'm like, that's not always the case. Like sometimes it is, but it's not always the case. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just a thing of like being young and just like being naive and just thinking like the world's out to get you.
And also like media steering you in that direction.
Yes.
Like it has been like an oversaturation of media making you think that that's a problem.
That's true.
Which again is one of the reasons I like Scott Pilgrim, because they're saying like actively, this is not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is that Scott saw Lisa like that, immediately started sexualizing her in his mind, and then started being weird about it because he was doing that.
Yeah.
And like that's the problem.
That's true.
Yeah, I think O'Malley knows how to handle this stuff really, really well. And I do think like it's an oversaturation of those kind of relationships and dynamics that is like that enforces that idea like you can't be friends with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott is being weird for really just no reason. Like he's luckily he gets better.
And Ramona's getting fed up with it, as highlighted by like I really like this bit where she's saying, Scott, maybe you should get a job so you aren't always fast asleep when I'm working. Okay, I'm sick. Excuse me, I'm sick of this too. I want, and it gets cut off by the phone ringing. But she's in Scott's dreams because she's working and she's ending up in the subspace. Yeah, and she's trying to express something she wants. She's frustrated, and so wants Scott to get a job. And he finally starts looking for a job.
And it takes a while to get a job, but he gets a job easier than I've seen anyone else in my life get a job. He just walks into the burger place and then like, yo, hey, Janet, can this guy have a job? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got a job, 500 experience. Yeah, and then he immediately gets fired, but he comes back. It's that whole thing is hilarious.
And he keeps forgetting to tell Ramona he got the job.
Yeah.
He keeps just like, God, Scott's a mess in this. So they also keep eating at this place together. I forget
Sneaky D's.
Yeah.
And again, like Scott's eating there a lot with them. He ain't buying it.
Yep.
Like it's just there's a lot. I think there's just a lot of focus on Scott eating out in this volume in particular, and like at the expense of other people.
Oh, there's all the stuff with Wallace and the landlord.
Yes.
All that stuff is great too.
Yeah. All of that's really good. Wallace has some great bits, like when Scott said, my mom said that we should buy some of those Tupperware things. You listen to me. I'm the one who tells you what your mother says. Okay? That's me. I say what your mom says.
Wallace is so good. And again, I hear Kieran Culkin's voice now for Wallace, and it makes it so much better.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
And the heat wave bit where he's trying to take care of Scott, but he comes back and he's drinking the water, and Scott's just, water. Wallace, can I have water? Wallace! It's so good. I love it.
It's just like, dude, get up and get it yourself. But yeah, it's once again, it's Scott. There are times where he does some of the dumbest things in the world, and you're just like, you're lucky you're a lovable idiot.
Stephen Stills sees Knives, and he tells Knives that they're hanging out. What? Why? It's cool. It's nice that he's like being nice, but like, does Stephen need to be inviting teenagers? Like I found that interesting. Like a bad or good thing. I think interesting. Like, because he knows the relationship with Scott, and like, why would he invite her to hang out with all these 20-year-olds? Like, it's interesting.
So we haven't really gotten into Stephen much as a character.
Yeah.
Stephen is super absent-minded about like relationship dynamics. This is why he's constantly screwing things up with Julie.
That's true. Okay.
He's constantly pissing her off because he's like, he is social dynamic, like dumb.
Yeah.
He has no observance of like you know how it'll be like, dude, check the room. Check the vibe.
Read the room.
Stephen cannot do it.
He doesn't have a thermometer.
To save his life.
Okay, that makes sense.
He has no vibe check on that shit.
Even Julie is like, why are you here? How do you know my name?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you invite her, Stephen? Like, that's a great
by all associations, like Knives would no longer be around at this point.
Yeah.
Except Stephen keeps inviting her out and saying like, oh yeah, Knives should hang out with us because Knives like dating Neil, right?
Yeah. Are they still together at this point?
No. I'm saying this is what Stephen does. Stephen's like, Yeah, right.
She's in the group, right?
She's part of it. I don't know.
She watched me play in my band once, right?
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
and that's Steven, and that's how like you keep Knives in the story and everything. But it is because everyone else would just be like, yeah, we'll just kind of let Knives go and like live a life not put on with all this early 20s bullshit that we're doing.
Yeah.
And Steven's like, no, Knives is like one of us.
That makes sense.
She's our biggest fan.
Okay.
So Knives has to hang out. Yeah, Steven's dumb as shit. And in that regard, Steven's dumb as shit.
I love it. There's a lovely moment where Wallace is gonna go to like a party or something, so he pre-drinks and he gets too drunk and he just passes out on the couch.
Yes.
And Ramona come home. He's like, oh, I was gonna cuddle with Ramona, and he's like, just pretend I'm not here. You guys can cuddle. And she's like, somehow the pantsless gay man is not bringing the romance, Scott. I think I'll bid you adieu. That's a really great line.
Yeah, that is.
Killer.
And he's just like, oh, this sucks. I want to cuddle.
And then the next day they have to go see their landlord.
They're really scary looking landlord.
Yeah,
see, like, really... to the point of what we were talking about with Ramona, by the way, yeah, the scary looking landlord bit is really good. Sorry, before I change the subject, we'll do the landlord thing. This is where I mentioned when we were doing the movie discussion, you get the elevator bit. That's visually recreated in the film. And yeah, it's really interesting. I really like when they get to the bottom and they don't really know what to say to each other, and they're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go. And he's like, yeah, me too. See you later. Yep. And they really don't know how to talk through the situation they're in, so they just like bounce, which I think is good. Speaking of the Ramona and Lisa stuff, she has this whole section where she asks Scott, like, I'm allowed to like Lisa, right? Like, she's cool. And Scott's like, oh yeah, she's great. And he's like, and Ramona's even asking, did you have a thing for her back in high school? She's pretty cute and you guys seem to be close. And he's like, oh, what? Blah, blah. No.
Yeah.
We, all my friends were girls back then, I guess. And she's like, oh my God, you were raised by teenage girls. No wonder you're such a sensitive boy.
Yeah.
I'm not a sensitive boy. I'm rough. Scott, just embrace that you were raised by girls.
It's okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love that whole exchange. But that does, I think, point to like, it's not a problem until Ramona starts seeing it as a problem.
Yeah.
Because again, of Scott's attitude. Just shouting out like Bryan Lee O'Malley does really great stuff with like the work paneling for the video game stuff.
1 million
hours later. And he's tired when he first encounters Roxy. And he's like, I don't want to do this. Oh my God, I've had the worst day ever.
Yeah.
And still gets her. That's very much like one-to-one of the movie interaction.
She's not a ninja. She's a half ninja.
Yes, a half ninja.
Next time it'll be deadly serious next time.
Yes.
What? That's still a great line from the book and movie.
Yeah. We get into Roxy and Ramona are both at Scott's work, and then he goes and confronts them, and then Ramona's like, dude, what are you doing here? And he's like, I work here.
You never told me.
She's like, wait, you work here? When did you get a job? I can't believe you haven't been bragging about this.
Yeah.
And then Scott finally puts 2 and 2 together about Roxy and figures out what she is, which is visualized in my favorite way ever of a brain hatching a little chick going beep beep. And then he's like, oh my God, sexy face.
Scott gets into Ramona's bag, her little subspace bag.
I have a Mondo figure of this.
That's dope.
That's Ramona, but with Scott's head poking out of the bag, which I love.
I won't lie.
Great.
It's kind of cute with his head poking out of the bag. It's just it kind of reminds me of Amir a little bit in God of War.
Oh sure, yeah. Oh yeah. Scott tries to escape through a subspace door, and then Roxy follows. Like, who do you think taught her that? I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah, Roxy does get a lot more stuff in this book, which I like.
Oh yeah, me too. There's just something I was gonna say about like when Scott confronts Ramona and Roxy at work. It's like where Ramona's like, oh my God, you got a job. She like, it's the way I interpret it is she sounds like she's actually proud of Scott for going out and getting a job. And then later on, I was like, hey, how come you never told me? I was like, oh, I completely forgot.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that's even when he's at Kim's new place and they're recording and Kim's like, did you tell Ramona about this? And he's like, no. He's like, did you tell Ramona about the job? He's like, oh no, I forgot to tell her that too.
He keeps forgetting.
Keeps doing it.
There's a great running gag of Scott not remembering what the day of his birthday. Like, he remembers the day, but not the month. So, like, the 27th is always his birthday.
The 27th, that's my birthday. And it's like...
The 27th of August, Scott. So, not my birthday?
Yeah.
I'm afraid not.
Scott. Scott.
Scott, how do you forget your birthday, dude?
So when Ramona does get onto shit about Lisa, as she does start getting the pings around her head, she starts like recognizing something in Scott's attitude or more pointedly, Lisa's attitude around Scott. That is setting her off.
Yeah.
Which leads into her not wanting Scott over, even though they were just about to move in together, so he has nowhere to go. Which leads to the only place I can go, the number that's in my pocket.
Yeah, Lisa gave him her number.
To which he does the.
This is the point I was like. This is the point I was really like, is Scott about to regress super hard right now? Like, is he about to like ruin with this relationship with Ramona? Like, because again, I didn't read this volume, so I was like, the fact that he ends up there, I was already like, this is too far, man. This is too far. I don't trust you, Scott Pilgrim. But luckily,
yes,
he blacks out and sees a bunch of pizza.
Yes. Yeah. We'll get into that. I really like when Lisa is confessing that everything, and he's like, you've been dressing in an unusually sexy fashion because of me, and she's like, yeah, I guess that's what I mean. That's amazing. Yeah. Like, God damn it, Scott. Scott loves to be admired.
This is probably like honestly like one of my favorite scenes in the whole book is the Lisa and Scott conversation.
And again, like talking about that closeout on paneling. Like just showing the isolated look of Scott and Lisa saying maybe we should.
That like scared me so much.
yeah.
Because like especially because like again like the way Bryan Lee O'Malley does like the paneling of like Scott in all like a completely like blank panel, and she's like, maybe we should cheat, and I'm like, no, Scott, I was scared to turn the page. I'm not even joking. This is like the most like worried I've been about a page turn in this whole book, and I was like, Scott, we can't. We still have 3 more volumes.
Yeah, it's very effective.
It's so good.
Bryan Lee O'Malley really gets you with that, where you're like, oh God, this is the moment. This
is
the moment.
And like, there's like again, like Lisa seems like a great girl for Scott. Like there is a situation where like he does do this and he gets with Lisa and he is happy, but I'm like, no, but what are we learning?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, then we're just doing a cycle.
Then it's a vicious cycle. Yeah.
Scott in that blackout, when after Lisa suggests that, has another dream, and he says, but you're everything I ever wanted, aren't you? And he pictures a both half angel, half devil Ramona, who says, isn't that up to you, Scott? Yeah.
And Roxy's in the dream.
Yeah, and Roxy's in the dream, and she's like, your dreams suck, Pilgrim. But I really like that visualization, the half demon, half angel, and asking it, like, isn't that up to you, Scott? Am I everything you've ever wanted? Also, Scott combating, like, what is it he really wants? So Lisa explains that in the morning that, no, we didn't do anything because you pushed me away and started babbling about how you're so in love with Ramona, and I started to cry, and you tried to cheer me up, and we ordered a pizza and got really loud, and then my sister came out and freaked on us, so we shut up and you fell asleep, and I went back to the room. Scott's just, why don't I remember all this? I don't know, you ate a lot of pizza.
Yeah. That was such a like breath of fresh air, like relief moment for me.
Yeah.
Like I was ready for her to be like, yeah, Scott, you know, you don't remember? Like, no. But no, like, God, no. Like the fact that like he's had a problem this volume. I think it was this volume where he's like the L word. Have you said the L word is a lesbian? Yes, that whole thing. Yes. And like he like does it like he does it subconsciously, meaning like he does love Ramona, like actually, is really beautiful. And then there's a moment where he's like, he has to go to Ramona. So he starts running towards Ramona and he goes the wrong way. And he's like, then he goes to the opposite direction. That's such a, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's beautiful art by Bryan Lee O'Malley. The determination to Ramona. Wait, wrong way.
No, he goes the wrong way because he goes to get his job back. Cause he's like, wait, he's like, because the way I interpret it, he's running to Ramona and goes, wait a minute, there's something I need to do first. And then he goes and begs for his job back. And then Dominica's like, all right, fine, you can have your job back. And then he does run back to Ramona. And just like you, Ryan, when I first got to that scene, like the very first time I read the book, and then Lisa's like, maybe we should, it was just like it was one of those, even I was like, oh shit, this is because it's one of those.
What's that song, the one that just starts with, oh shit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That just plays in that moment over the two of them looking at
London Bridge.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I won't lie though. I kind of I don't know how this is gonna put me as a person, but I do kind of feel for Lisa. I don't condone her saying, "Hey, let's cheat on your girlfriend. Cheat on your girlfriend with me." Don't condone that, but I do kind of see like this person that she's known for so long, that she's obviously had feelings for so long.
Yeah.
And the poor girl is just never seen other than a friend.
Yeah.
Where
Also,
she
like,
so obviously wants more. She's willing to put herself out there and or just be like, look, I've been dressing sexily for you. I've been doing all this other stuff because I try to get your attention. And even though Ramona obviously is starting to suss her out, because there's that, I think the third time they go to Sneaky D's where Lisa's trying to tell something to Scott, but then she gets all flustered because Neil's also poor Neil. He's like, you assholes don't show up to my house anymore. I miss hanging out with you guys. So even Kim's like, we're recording now. It's like, how come we're not practicing? It's like, because we're recording right now. Steven getting his panties all in a bunch because there's like, we're recording right now. We have to do it this X, Y, and Z first.
Just because you brought it up, it's one of my favorite bits, which is where Scott and Lisa go to hang out at the house where Neil is. And he's like, I don't know where they went. Okay, Scott, I don't know why they aren't here. And now I'm dead. Great. And then they're both, Scott and Lisa, just standing there. And she's like, oh my God, you killed him. And he's like, yeah, maybe we should go.
Ben, to your point of Lisa and like how like you can sympathize with her, like Scott came to her house in the middle of the night after he had a big fight with his girlfriend. This is her opportunity.
Oh yeah.
So like it might not, be like the most moral thing to do because like they might not be completely broken up, but like this is someone that like she wants to be with, and this is her opportunity. Like so, like I get it. Like it is. Yeah. It's not shoot your shot. It's not unreasonable for her to try this. Like it's like 2:00 in the morning, right? Isn't it like it's like super late? So like
2 a.m. It goes back to it reminds me back of the How I Met Your Mother thing. Is like nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m.
Yeah, it's only really good things.
Ben doesn't follow that advice. He'll stay up till 5. But
playing video games ain't bad. It's a treasure.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's very much like it's understanding where Lisa's coming from. Like Lisa can propose it, but like the onus is on Scott. Yeah. And like even if like it doesn't matter. Like, yes, she probably would have like had sex with Scott had Scott wanted to. But she's going for it in full emotionality of like, I would rather be with you. Like, is that something on the table?
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta talk about the Knives subplot. It's not overly present. This is not a Knives focused book. There's a lot of other things to focus on, like we've said. But Knives is there, and it's Knives talking with the other girl and saying like, no, Scott's not that bad. I never said that he was that bad. Like he's not. He's fine. He's great. Again, like going with that 17-year-old thing, like still like kind of rosy coloring Scott Pilgrim, and then being pointed out, well, is that why you slashed his face on your shrine? And she's like, who did that? You. Who else would care? And then we find out that, like, no, in fact, it was not Knives. It was Knives' father.
Mr. Chow.
Yeah.
Who will punish Scott for hurting her.
The deadly assassin.
And, of course, it was the auntie who spilled the beans. It's like, oh, yeah, I saw you out and about with a white boy. And both of her parents just, like, freeze up. And Knives is trying to be like, no, it's fine. And then you get Knives' dad do the brain snapping thing, but instead it was like an engine of destruction.
Yeah.
The other thing is that he doesn't know what Scott did to Knives.
No.
He just thinks they're dating.
Yeah.
Or like on the cusp of dating.
Right.
But he doesn't know like how shitty Scott was. So he's still just trying to kill him for that.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, jeez.
And that confrontation ends at Ramona's place, right?
So what happens is Scott's trying to run away.
Yeah.
So he runs into the subspace, which is where he stumbles into one of Ramona's dreams.
Yes.
And Ramona is sitting on the floor next to Gideon.
Yep.
Like a good little girl, with a shirt that says Merge on it.
Ooh.
And she says, "What are you doing here? Get out. Stop looking at me." And she is so mad at Scott and comes kicking him out. And after Scott explains why he was running in there, she ultimately says, I guess that's only fair. Just forget what you saw. Which is our first hint of like, there's some inner stuff Ramona's really, really trying not to reveal to Scott.
Yeah.
And that's when Scott confesses that he was with Lisa. Ramona starts to get those pings. She starts to shut down. She says, are you in love with her? And at the exact same moment, Scott spots Roxy having stayed the night over with Ramona. And it starts to make Scott fall apart. And she says, Scott, I'll explain it later. Just go walk it off. Scott is falling apart, tumbling down, just confused about what's happening. And we finally get our first look at the Mega Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy. Cool guy.
And I love how it's
no, not you. I don't need you. I need her. And crashes through him.
Love it.
To get back to Ramona.
Implying that Mega Scott showed up before.
Yes. Mega Scott, super important in the volumes ahead. We'll now knowing, like we had our movie discussion, we've alluded to some stuff. Knowing this is all of the Mega Scott they really got, the ending of the movie makes some sense.
Yeah.
Like, what can you do?
Yeah.
But just what are your feelings right now, Ryan? This is your first time encountering the comic Mega Scott.
It's definitely foreshadowing. I can tell he will be a bigger character, and like this is the moment where like I can regress. I can, you know, not fight for the thing I've been fighting for. I can still stay a shitty person, and like this is the representation of that.
Yeah.
And he rejects it, and this is such a good moment for Scott.
Yes.
Because then there's reconciliation with Ramona, and there's reconciliation with Mr. Chow in some capacity. And Scott like stands up for himself, and he's like, and I took a picture. It's like it's one of my favorite things Scott said. He's like, and I know we can make this relationship work. And he said a bunch of stuff, but he's like, in a black panel, I know we can make this relationship work. Like, it's like the first time he's really like, I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to try for this. Yeah. And it's like, yes, God, yes. Yeah, the power of love. Yes. Love it. Yeah. It's good stuff. And also, I'm excited for more Mega Scott.
And also, once again, I can't believe I'm saying this. Credit where credit is due. Scott does say, like, look, full disclosure, I was at Lisa's last night. And then when Ramona breaks down, he's like, but... And it actually is like, look, Wallace kicked me out of the house. You were pissed at me. Lisa was the only one who I could go to. So there was nowhere else for me to go. You were mad. And I know if I showed up, I was going to make you even madder. It was this whole thing. And then Ramon's like, oh, well, actually, when you put it that way, that makes total sense. I was that. Yeah, okay. And he straight up says, like, look, nothing happened. And then right when he's about to tell her that he loves her, that's when he sees Roxy. Yeah. And even when Ramona, like later on, it's kind of like Ramona's trying to brush it off. Like there's this part where after the fight where Ramona's talking about how they only made out a little bit. I'm like, to me, that should be the biggest record scratch in the entire volume.
Yes.
It's just I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. And Scott's able to let it go, which I was ready for them to have like, oh, we're going to start another fight immediately.
Well, and this is the big thing is that like Ramona's apologizing, saying all these things. And she's like, we didn't even make out that much. And I'm sure it was the same with you and Lisa.
Yeah.
Which also says she didn't listen to Scott.
Yep.
Because Scott said nothing happened.
Yeah.
She's internalizing. You made out with her a little. I made out with her a little. So and I was just overreacting, and we can. Yeah, which is not what Scott is trying to convey.
Yeah.
And not what Scott should be okay with.
Yeah.
But Scott's also just said, I'm in love with you. And Scott's writing that. So he's ignoring it.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a big red flag on Ramona. Where it goes, oh, Ramona did do something, and Scott didn't. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
100% that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And even
it's very, Bryan Lee O'Malley does a really good job because, like, it's very just, like, there, and because Scott's not acknowledging it, it's like, you who knows how much you're taking, and, like, you could argue that that's playing in the same space of, like, kind of the cavalierness about the lesbian stuff that Ramona herself has. We didn't talk too much about this, but the way Ramona talks about Roxy is clearly offended with the way Ramona treats her.
Yeah.
That she just kind of drops her like her lesbian thing was a phase. And there's kind of an illusion that Roxy is bi rather than lesbian. But like there's a dismissal of it. This isn't important because it didn't mean because it was two girls. It's not relevant. That means it's not emotionally relevant to them, and it means it's not emotionally relevant to exterior relationships like Scott.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that Roxy's saying that's not true, and you two deserve each other. Roxy's the person who recognizes that like there is a parallel here between Scott and Ramona. She's the first one to really dish that out as one of the exes and say like you two are the same.
Yeah, and it is a big bummer moment. Like I like this moment a lot. I'm really happy for Scott and like that they end up like staying together, but like Ramona saying, oh, we only made out a little bit, like just throwing that line away is like,
This is
Oh man.
this is really important because it's one of those things where like when you're ready to take a big step in a relationship, even though this is not the same as when Scott said I love you to Envy in the previous volume and she just didn't say anything, it doesn't mean the person is not necessarily that they don't feel that love too, but it doesn't mean that they're in the same place to commit to the relationship that you are.
Yeah.
Which is like even Ramona saying, I think I'm in love with you, Scott,
I think
which is
I'm
not
in
me
love.
saying, not Ramona saying I'm in love with you.
I think I'm in love
I
with you
think
too.
I'm in love with you too. And that's kind of Ramona wanting it, right? Like it very much feels like Ramona wanting to be in love with Scott, wanting to be in that position, but not really being there. I think a lot of like what Roxy lays on the table, this is also like the volume where you start to really peel back that layer of like Ramona's not what she's saying she is.
Yeah.
Like on the surface, Ramona's not where she's saying she is. Like she's playing that same distance and aloofness that Scott's been doing.
Yeah.
And that's starting to come back on her. And the ultimately the thing being like at the end of this volume, Scott's saying he's ready to give that up. Yeah. Scott's saying, I don't want to be distant. I want to be connected. I want to be committed. And Ramona's not there yet. But she wants to be. And so she's saying that's fine. And that's good.
Yeah.
And Scott's not recognizing that Ramona's not there.
And we saw 3 more volumes. two more volumes, sorry.
5 and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, because for the first chunk of the series, Ramona is put on a pedestal. And it's one of the things I do like about this book is also it's like very like, hey, it's weird because O'Malley puts these characters like, hey, just be careful. Even the people you put on pedestals, they're human. They make mistakes. They do shitty things. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Scott never really got jealous of anyone in the book of any of Ramona's exes because he just has to fight them.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas
here comes, and this is the one where Lisa shows up, and Scott's just like, oh yeah, Lisa's a friend, blah blah blah, and instantly Ramona's like, at first like, oh, I want to know more about the story, I want to know more about this, but then the more Ramona is starting to get jealous of Lisa, that's when she starts talking with Roxy again. It's like Ramona's regressing back into her old ways, and once again, one of the things I like about this volume and how it delves more into the exes a little bit more, kind of like with volume 3 and Todd, you get a little bit more of Roxy, and Roxy is like, she's also extremely pissed at Ramona because she's like, how dare you do this? I wanted to be with you and you just straight up threw me to the side, and now you're saying what we had was a phase. What is this bullshit?
A sexy phase.
Yeah. and it's legitimate because like I do think it's less O'Malley playing into the shitty tropes of girl on girl, essentially like being reduced down to meaningless and like well, we don't put the same stock in that as we put in like a relationship, a real relationship. Certainly not in the sense of like the I was going through a phase in college, like I think he's very pointedly targeting that on Ramona, and so in this instance is kind of a rejection of that concept and like saying this is a red flag rather than like, yes, Scott is treating it that way, he's brushing it off as like it's not relevant, but that doesn't mean that's going to stay that way. That's not the way to treat this thing. It is a real dynamic and it is a real emotional investment, so it is a real problem.
Yeah,
for Scott.
And they move in together.
And they move in together thanks to Jason, who has a car.
Who's Jason?
Yep.
The guy with the car. Hey,
I know a guy.
Car. God, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's such
really
a good
bit.
bit.
Well, also, his name's Jason Kim.
Yes.
And then because Kim was having Jason Kim move in.
Yes.
He's like, wait, Jason Kim? It's like, Scott, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, it's really good.
Yeah. But also, not to share Ramona even more, but even when after Scott and Ramona have their whole big like, I love you, Ramona, and Ramona's like, I think I'm loving you too, which I also, Ryan Good, thanks for pointing that out because I did catch that too. I'm like, oh look, another giant record scratch that should be like, excuse me, what? I just borrowed my soul to you and you think? And then they're all, they're at like this Korean barbecue place to celebrating Lisa going to California to become an actor. And they're like, Scott, I thought you didn't drink. And Ramona's like, no, I'm making him do it. And it's like, that's something you shouldn't do.
Right.
Like Ramona is forcing him to drink It's just like
Natalie envy with forcing Scott to do things. And implying that like he's less of a man if he doesn't.
Yeah.
Same kind of shit going on here. Yeah, it's a toxic behavior trait for sure.
Yeah. And it's I won't lie, the ending, like the last page is really, really good. Like when Scott finally says is like, okay, no bullshit. How old are you? And then Ramona reveals her birthday is New Year's Day and that she's 24 and then then she's 24. Then Scott's like, oh, okay, mine's September 27th. And it's this really cute moment of them looking up at the Toronto skyline. Like, yeah, I like it's one of those things where,
this moment with like, his hand on her boob.
Oh, yeah.
Not that part, but the last part where.
Yeah, I can't see it.
No, but it's it's like a moment with your hand on my boobs, like, oops. But no, like the last page where she's like, nah, yeah, this is a really nice moment. Because, you get those moments with your Sparkz. I'm sure you had it with your wife, because I definitely had it with my fiance, where everything in a certain moment is just nice. Like you take a moment, you step back and you go, you know what, this is great.
This feels right.
Great. This is, yeah, exactly. This feels right. And while it's a really cute ending to note on, I'm still in my brain, I'm still like, yeah, but there's like these really big, like those 3 really big red flags that Ramona just said in the last 20 pages. And I'm just like, crisis mode.
This is like the happiest.
So like, to your point that you're making, Ben, in the way he panels it, it's not clear who asks, don't you just wish this moment could last forever? Whether it's Scott or Ramona. We don't see who's talking. Ramona says, this moment with your hand on my boob, which could be in response to Scott. It could also be her being like, this moment with your hand on my boob, like calling attention to it while she had been sweet before. We don't have the context to know, right? But because of that, this is more Scott's moment, right? Because to Scott, this feels right. Because she says, I think that was more your moment than mine do because of the boob grab thing. And that implies, like, for Ramona, this isn't that moment.
Yeah. This also feels like the calm before the storm, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting a happy ending of a volume? Shit's about to get whack, y'all. Oh, no. I feel it in my bones. I'm scared.
5 and 6, man. Even it's been a long time, but from what I remember reading about 5 and 6, it's just yikes.
It's about to go off. I really like this. I really like everything that Bryan Lee O'Malley does with them in this. It's really complex. I think it's good stuff. I do want to highlight, yes, I do like when Roxy is ultimately defeated. We get the nice Frieza slash where she's
and she's
sliding in half.
She turns into animals.
Yeah.
Like when you open up one of those boxes in a Sonic game.
Exactly. Yes, I think that everything here is just done really well. There are some elements where it's like the Kim and Knives thing, kissing, especially in a book where we're talking about like the kind of passiveness of disregarding female on female emotional connection and interactions and sexuality. That will be addressed again.
I'm glad.
Kim and Knives is not a thing that doesn't come up again in some respect. It might not be to the extent that we would want in 2023, but it's not a forgotten detail. I do think O'Malley is making a point of something, and it is a point that happened at the beginning of this book. And what does that mean? And again, like putting Kim and Knives still in Scott's orbit in an important way. They're both important pieces of how Scott's ultimately going to have to address that he's made mistakes. While he is trying to clean up the present, there's still a lot of past shit that Scott has not dealt with. And so we're going to see a lot of that. Wallace is great in this volume. I love every bit with him. I think this is a really, really good volume. It's filled with a ton of stuff that could not make it into the movie because you're like, just how? And this is where from here they didn't have the material. So where we go next?
It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun.
I'm excited.
Any last thoughts on these volumes as we close out?
I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm loving it. I think it's such a lovely book. And again, I've said it before, but like how this book can look the way it is, but also like present like the drama inside of it. It's just like it's what I love about comic books. You know, like anything can be, you know, really like really detailed, like the most detailed comic book of all time, or it could just be, you know, some cartoon characters, but like the emotionality is still there. The art is beautiful. Like the art, like you mentioned, Ben, like it's getting like more exaggerated and more fun, and like they're doing cooler things in every volume. I love the color editions, reading them. I think it doesn't feel like a half-assed job. Like Ramona's hair color changing all the time. Like it's awesome. I love it. It's really so well done. And I am just so excited to get to 5 and 6.
Yeah, even the last little bit where Ramona's hair changes to red, it looks so much like Kim's shade of hair that I'm like, is that Kim? Is Kim making him drink? That's weird. But
there was one panel where I'm like, why is Kim saying this? And I realized, oh, this girl doesn't have freckles. That's not Kim.
Right. Yeah. And then I looked back, I was like, oh wait, yeah, Kim has freckles. Ramona, that's Ramona. All right, cool.
On her hair helps me too.
Yeah. God, this story is it definitely goes twists and turns. Like when you first start it, and it's just like, okay, this like it's one of those like those teen romance, not novels, but it's like one of those teen romances where it's like, oh, guy likes girl, guys try to get the girl. Here's the gimmick, and the gimmick is fighting silly exes. But then the more we dive into it, the more character development there is, the more drama there is. And this is definitely volume 4 specifically is the linchpin and the quote unquote flashpoint where the story goes from like more fun and silly to gimmicky to we're getting into some heavy shit here now. Like not to say that there wasn't heavy shit in volume 3. Volume 3 was where I think where O'Malley was trying to gently turn us more into like, okay, here's where we're really getting into the heavy stuff, especially with going into Todd's backstory, or not his backstory, a little bit of his backstory, and especially how he treated not only Ramona but Envy, and how he's also one big dirty cheater and goes all through all his other stuff. And now we go into Roxy, where Roxy's like pissed, but she's still pining for Ramona. Ramona is thinking that Scott cheated on her and made out with Lisa, so she's like, okay, I'll make out with Roxy, it's fine. But then not even listening to Scott when he said nothing happened. I slept on the couch and she was in the room and all this stuff. And like, look, I'm telling you this because I want to be 100% transparent, and says like, look, I had nowhere to go. This is where I went. And Ramona just completely glazing over that, and then giving her own big reveal of, oh yeah, I made out with her. Oh, I think I love you. And then like Sparkz alluded to, is like, we don't know who said that moment. Like, this is a great, like, we don't know exactly who said it, because I always thought it was Scott who said it, and then Ramona pointed out, I was like, yeah, you're touching my boob, that's why. And he's like, oh wait, no, sorry, didn't mean like that.
I think it is. I think it is Scott, but I do find it interesting that he leaves it open to possible interpretation.
Right.
It seems pretty direct that it's probably Scott.
Yeah.
It's probably not Ramona proposing it and then like in a way to make fun of Scott for holding her boob in that moment. But we have no way of knowing for sure. And I think the vagueness is nice, but it does lead into that idea that, like, you know, if it is Scott saying it, Scott's having this big moment that Ramona's not in.
Yeah.
Right.
It finally feels like Scott is like not fully evolved, but like he's evolved to a second form. And like Ramona just kind of feel like she's going backwards a little bit.
Yeah. This kind of feels like this is the part where it's like the Mr. Incredible meme was like before and after, like, you know, the really dark, it's like shaded by war and something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, when you only watch like when we've only seen the Scott Pilgrim anime / watched the movie, it's like, oh yeah, Scott Pilgrim, this is nice. And it's like those who read the books, and it's like,
yeah,
especially after a certain point, because now I'm really excited to go back and read 5 and 6, because I do remember snippets of some really hardcore like stuff that's like, okay, this went from a 5 to a 10 real quick. And just, I'm looking forward to it. This definitely proves that, yes, it could have a fun, gimmicky little thing in the beginning in the first few volumes, but as the volumes go on, there's more depth, there's more character development, and I can see why people love and praise these books to high heaven. And I don't want to say it's like, oh, it's a slow burn, things get better with time. It's like with every progressing volume, obviously more stuff is revealed, but you can tell it's like this isn't what we thought was when the journey started, but you want to go to the end. You can't wait.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right. That'll do it.
Hell yeah.
Great conversation. Love going through these books. That was Scott Pilgrim's Volume 3 and 4. We will be back for Volume 5 and Volume 5 alone because it gets meaty.
It's a big boy.
There's just no world. There's no world. I didn't even think we'd go this long on these two, but
hell yeah.
There's no world where we can cover 5 and 6 in a single episode.
There was a lot of meat on 3 and 4's bones. When I was reading this, I was like, man, there's a lot of meat. Like, not to say that there wasn't any meat on 1 and 2, but that's the beginning of the story. Once you get more into the thick of it, it's like, okay, there's some stuff to talk about here. All right.
For sure.
A thick prime rib.
So expect to see that. As we alluded to, we do have a Scott Pilgrim versus the World movie discussion, a cinephile review that you can go check out right now at the time of this release on our YouTube channel, on our Fake Nerd Podcast audio feed. That's where it is. You can go check that out. And we'll be back again with the rest of this series in volumes. And then we'll also be talking about the Netflix show for sure.
Whoop, whoop.
So look forward to all of that. And other stuff going on the podcast. We're still doing Monarch. There's some top 15 for 2023 coming up. So keep an eye out for all of that. Like, subscribe, check out fakenerdpodcast.com, all our socials, all that stuff to get your information. Ben, where can people find you?
Well, they could find me getting it together at BenMaggot27 on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads, where you could also find me writing for Fusion Gaming Magazine, Old School Gamer Magazine, GoNintendo.com, and playing Mary Frankenstein in D and Dark, which is a Dungeons and Dragons real play style podcast.
And Ryan?
You can find me next time, taking it deadly serious next time, at DJ Tony Snark all over the internet.
You can find me just mentioning one other note that we didn't touch on, which is that Knives' dad approves of Scott standing up for himself and taking responsibility, and that makes him say, you know what, Knives? Scott's a half-decent guy.
You know what? So, you could date a white boy.
Maybe you can date white boys. You can find me just making that point at Sparkz Witty on Instagram, Twitter, SPARKZ Witty. Were you going to weigh in on that, Ben?
I was gonna say, I was gonna talk about that. I was like when Scott was talking about how I was like, look, I never touched her, I never violated her honor. It was like, oh hey, look, another time where Scott is yes, he's telling the truth, and yeah, because it wasn't he who kissed Knives, it was Knives who kissed him. So it was like I didn't want anything to do with it. I don't
outside of cheating on your daughter, I was a perfect gentleman.
Pretty much, yeah. Outside of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Crimes absolved.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Is like, I'm mad at you, but I'm not as mad at you as before. And also, you're right. You did not take advantage of her. So I guess somewhat kudos, but it's one of those things. It's like, you suck, but you don't 100% suck.
Yeah. Importantly, we did highlight that, Knives has made all of her decisions and everything she's doing in these books, knowing full well that Scott cheated on her. Ramona still doesn't know that Scott was dating Knives when they got together. I wonder if that'll come back around. Let's find out in Volume 5. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay fake nerds.